regulatory related to procurement. So we do have procurement at a national level and global level, and the global procurers want to really ensure that we have the kind of quality standard in place to procure and make the products accessible to the people who need them. So for that, they have put a requirement of WHO pre-qualification for them to procure from suppliers and manufacturers. So now we've got 6 national regulatory authorities with maturity level 3. So in this panel discussion, we wanted to explore how the 6 ML3 national regulatory authorities could play a role in the procurement of countermeasures, vaccines, medicines, and diagnostics for Africa. So we have in the panel experts and heads of national regulatory authorities who have rich experience to share with us their experiences and what needs to be done in terms of contribution of national regulatory authorities for procurement. So I have Ms. Uche Afoekelu, sorry if I don't pronounce your name properly, from Nigeria FDA, NAFDAC, and I have Dr. Mimi Darko from online. Mimi, can you hear me? Are you online?
Yes, I can.
Good, thank you very much. Thank you. The head of Ghana FDA. And then I have Sibusiso from PATH. And I have my brother who decided to step in and share with us WHO's experience and what WHO is working from WHO. So I will just call panelists to take their seats here. So I would like just to start with the national regulatory authorities, Uche here in the room and Mimi online. So my first question is about, I'll just ask you to share how attainment and compliance of WHO ML3 status has strengthened your approval system to ensure access to quality products. So now we've moved from ML2 to ML3, and how that move from ML2 to ML3 really helped you strengthen the approval process. So I will give Uche the first to just intervene first, and then I'll move to Mimi online. Uche, please.
Thank you very much, and good evening to everyone. Okay, so briefly, yes, ML3, it means we're supposed to be a stable, well-functioning, and integrated regulatory system. So this attainment has actually guided us, has actually added to our capabilities, our efficiencies. For pre-market approvals, we benefited so much from all our review processes, regardless whether they are abridged, whether they are full reviews. So this was one of the gains from preparing and attaining maturity level 3. For post-market approvals and authorizations, it's actually improved our pharmacovigilance activities and market surveillance in such a way that detection and response to safety issues became more streamlined for us. And if we go by the compliance to the ML3 requirements. It means that we are aligning our processes to international best practices. And that way we are now fostering more confidence and trust in the products that we approve, so that people feel at home with these. And then this also will help the procurement institutions to have more confidence in dealing with whatever products that we approve. Thank you.
So thank you very much. I will go online to Dr. Darko to give us her comments on this.
Okay, so thank you very much. Taking over from where Uche mentioned. So one of the things I would say is that it has enhanced the quality, our general quality management systems. So it has enhanced that we have procedures in place. I mean, first, you know, there are 9 functions, and one of them is the regulatory system, which is the law. So it has ensured that if you are doing anything, it should be backed by either a law, either a guideline, and SOP. So it's allowed us to put our systems in order. It's actually strengthened our quality management system. It has also ensured that we have linked regulatory functions. So normally regulators, sometimes if we are not careful, we work in silos and there's not that much communication between one and the other. But the assessment, it was a tough process. I'm sure Uche will bear me out. We had to work very hard at it, but it has allowed us internally to be able to harmonize our activities and collaborate better within the regulatory agency. And as well, it has also allowed us to build trust and recognition outside the agency. So now there are 6 ML3 agencies. We trust each other's decisions. We can harmonize and collaborate because we have the same systems that have been assessed by the same agency. And so it can even allow us to have assessment reports that we can share with each other. We trust each other's decisions. So that is what I would add, trust and recognition. It has also allowed us to be recognized internationally. So now you say you're an ML3, stable, well-functioning, and with those, some who have ML4 systems, you can say that you have an advanced system in certain areas. And that recognition by itself is very good for us. So that is what I would add on to what Uche said, apart from strengthening our quality management system as a whole and then allowing us to collaborate with each other, each function internally. So that's what I'll say for now.
Thank you very much. That's very good to hear. I mean, the confidence and trust the public puts on the national regulatory authorities with a stronger maturity level, and also the increased quality management system and harmonization and recognition of NRS amongst themselves. This is very good. So I will just pass on to my colleague Sibu. As a global health institution, PATH has been working to strengthen, to support national regulatory authorities. Could you please share with us what exactly PATH has been doing to really strengthen national regulatory authorities in terms of capacity building and strengthening, please?
Can you hear me? Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Right, thank you so much, Abebe. So I'll not explain much what PATH does, but we're an international NGO. We've been working in the regulatory space for a while, and we've been working with national regulators through the work that we do with Out and Empowered particularly, and Africa CDC in some instances as well. And what we have been able to do is capacity building and technical assistance, and that involves working with national regulators in terms of, first of all, identifying where the gaps are, and then pulling the different regulators and having sessions with them on just training programs to enhance our technical expertise in regulatory science and also product evaluation. I mean, I think PATH is a bit different in that we've got different expertise from regulatory, and that includes vaccines, that includes different products as well. And so we've been able to leverage our global expertise and expertise that exists in the region as well to have sessions with regulators in terms of strengthening frameworks, and also in terms of regulatory harmonization. Who are part of the AMRH program, working on harmonizing regulatory requirements across the continent. So in addition to working directly with the regulators, we also form part of the technical task teams as well. And we've done a bit of work, including looking at, we've done one study on 2 products where we looked at how much time does it take for products once they're approved in first world countries for them to be approved in LMICs, and that was before COVID-19. That was mainly aimed at understanding just the challenges in terms of regulatory as it relates to the time in terms of approvals in the region. And then also, it's not just that; it's also to say then what are the things that need to be undone in terms of ensuring that we are efficient, or we work with the regulators in terms of being efficient. We've also worked with the regulators in terms of building their capacity on advocating with their governments, in terms of ensuring that governments do prioritize the work that's being done by the regulators, and giving them practically one-on-one on advocacy as well. And then I think the other thing is we've worked with local manufacturers as well, just in terms of ensuring that they meet the WHO PQ. For example, we've worked in Senegal with the Institute Pasteur, Dakar, in terms of areas where they've had a bit of challenges in terms of PQ, particularly with the yellow fever. So we've done a bit of work there in terms of building up their capabilities as part of the work that we've been doing with Africa CDC actually. And then we've done the same. We've worked in South Africa with Afrigen as well. So those are some of the things in terms of capacity building for WHO PQ as well. And then I've mentioned the advocacy support. And then we've done a bit of work as well with regulators, especially during COVID, just in terms of working to make the public understand in terms of crisis response, basically working with regulators in terms of communicating what the regulator is doing, why it's important, and also addressing some of the concerns that, and it might not relate to the procurement, but it's part of the work that part has done in terms of just supporting national regulators as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sibu. So let's move on to the focus of this session, which is how NRS could contribute in terms of supporting global procurers, the likes of Gavi and UNICEF and Global Fund, in terms of quality assurance issues. So let me just go online and ask Mimi to share with us their experience, Ghana FDA, working with global procurers, Gavi, UNICEF, and Global Fund, and others. Mimi, please.
Thank you very much. If I were to say, directly, we don't have much work. We don't work much with global, with the procurers. It's normally maybe after the products have been procured that we would help monitor the safety. So, for example, if there's any product that has pre-qualification, for example, we in Ghana insist that it is still registered in the country, but a lot of countries don't. And that way we know exactly what to do when we have to monitor the quality and the safety of the product on the market, because we have a full dossier and therefore we can do that. But we have not had that much, apart from that, most of the time they tend to work with the immunization programs, and then we take over in the monitoring of the safety with the programs. So when it has to do with actual procurement, we don't do any much direct work with them. It is only when after the products have been procured and they come in that we then start to work with them. So that is what I'll be able to say for now. I don't think it's the best, but that is what I'll say for now to move to another question.
All right, thank you very much. Uche, any experience from NAFDAC?
Yeah, so it's pretty much the same with Ghana. We don't have any direct partnership with them, but when you look at a list of our development partners, you will find UNICEF, you will find Global Fund, you will find Gavi. So pretty much for these collaborations, they are crucial because that is where we can beat our chest and be confident that the products we authorize, that they procure and distribute, meet all the quality requirements in terms of safety, efficacy, and they're usually of the highest quality. So when we align with our regulatory processes, this will contribute to the assurance, like I said before, the assurance and the confidence in products coming out of our system. So like Ghana, we don't have that direct link, but they somehow work with us behind the scenes, yeah? Pretty much that is it, yeah.
Good, thank you very much. So now let's move on to, again, a more detailed discussion about the requirement by global procurers to reach to WHO PQ for manufacturers to get access to the global market. And now we just want to understand what the role of the national regulatory authorities could be in this space. So let's just discuss openly. We have the WHO PQ standard and we have manufacturers. Manufacturers are complaining that the WHO PQ is taking too much time and resources. And WHO is saying that it's partly because of the manufacturers, how they submit the dossier and how they respond to the queries and the questions that are raised by the PQ team, which makes the process really too long. So up until recently, we have only 2 national regulatory authorities with maturity level 3. Now we have 6 maturity level 3 national regulatory authorities. So the PQ process historically started with the background that we don't have really mature national regulatory authorities to do the things that are required by the WHO PQ. So I just want to understand the WHO perspective in a more detailed way to really make us understand how the 6 national regulatory authorities could play in this role. And I will come back to NAFDAC and Ghana FDA to really make a comment on what my brother will tell us about WHO PQ. Because this is very critical issue that we need to address, and we need to come to a consensus in terms of what can be done so that we can fast track PQ, and at the same time, or something that national regulatory authorities can come together and do the things that PQ is doing right now. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. And so first of all, let me begin by congratulating the 6 African NRAs that have achieved maturity level 3. As you have heard from some of them, it was not an easy journey. And to reach that is a major step, and we must congratulate them. Secondly is, I think to respond to your question, it's important to understand 2 things. One, what is the process of achieving that and what tools are used to do that? That's on one side. And 2, what are the requirements of the quality assurance policies of the procurers? I think if we understand those 2, then we can answer your question. But of course, the third point that we'll need to deal with is how can we recognize the achievements reached by the maturity level 3 and utilize them to improve on the efficiencies of the existing systems that you have talked about. If we did, I hope we'll have done justice to your question.
Okay.
So in terms of the process of achieving maturity level 3, maybe let me begin by, since it is addressing the procurement question, let me begin. What are the requirements of the procurement agencies? Most of the international procurement agencies actually have 4 elements in their quality assurance policy. For most of the products, they will say we require PQ, secondly, or SRA. Now, what is WLA? When the product is not yet achieved, that you hear them talking about expert review panel. And then for Global Fund, for example, there's what they call a category of essential medicines. What virtually those are, it's their term to mean those medicines to manage opportunistic infections that are not part of their core TB, HIV, and malaria. And and they have a quality assurance policy for those. They actually, the minimum is registration by the National Regulatory Authority. But in all cases, and I want in all cases, even where they require PQ, where they require SRA or WLA, the product must be registered by the National Regulatory Authority. They don't want to override that. Okay. So those are the requirements. Then in terms of as you've heard, it was SRA for PQ, now that has been replaced by WLA. How do you become a WLA? Then to meet that requirement in the quality assurance policies. For that, you go through a global benchmarking process. And as you know, global benchmarking, the outcome is maturity level 1 to 4. Maturity level, there's almost no system, and it's almost non-existence. Maturity level is reactive, and no system are not interlinked, as systems are not interlinked, are not as you heard from Mimi. And then maturity level 3 is stable and functioning, well-functioning system. And then, of course, maturity level is advanced and continuous improvement. That's simplistic. Now, to get to the WLA, now the GBT, the global benchmarking tool, is mainly for assessment of existence of systems. How well the regulatory authority is established and how well is configured. It has some elements of performance evaluation, but unfortunately, it did not address all the elements of performance evaluation. And so in order to get to a WLA, at first, you should have the system in place and configured. So you must be, as a minimum, you must have maturity level 3. And then you undergo a performance evaluation exercise, at the end of which you become WLA. And then you qualify to become, according to that requirement of the procurement policies that I've talked about. So that is the situation in which we are. But we must also recognize that improvement from, as you've heard, it's not it's not a mean achievement to reach maturity level 3. That's why I think the systems, the procedures should actually recognize. If you ask me if I was to reconfigure the procurement policies of those international agencies, the first one I would ask them to reconfigure with immediate effect is where, for example, they say essential drugs and say National Regulatory Authority. Imagine relying, let's be open here, relying on maturity level 1 would not be appropriate. This is where I would say, as a minimum, you should rely on maturity level 3. This is what I would strongly recommend. Secondly, is to recognize again, either individually or collectively, what the maturity level 3 have achieved. Now, and I can tell you what we are thinking and what we, in this, and for the regulatory authorities that were in an earlier meeting in April, we discussed this concept, and this is, you know, for pre-qualification, of course, we have 2 routes of assessment. If a full assessment by pre-qualification, and then an assessment that has been done by a WLA or stringent regulatory authority. So for that one that has been, there is no duplication, there is an abridged assessment, and it comes to pre-qualification. And what we are proposing in order, one, to recognize the achievement that has been made by the maturity level 3, but also to encourage them to continue on that improvement path, is to also, we did not want to call it abridged, the same as SRA, but a facilitated process, so that then again, you do not repeat what you leverage the report and the assessment of maturity level 3, and you can take those products. What will it happen? What will it address? One, it will address the efficiencies even of PQ that you are talking about, because you are leveraging already these artists. But 2, the reputation that pre-qualification has had, because when we do that leverage maturity level 3, it will be recognized publicly in the public assessment report that this has been based on the assessment of that maturity. That will bring that recognition. And we hope that will give actually more confidence to the international procurers in recognizing this maturity level 3, and including what I have already said, that those who say national regulatory authority, they should actually replace that with maturity level 3. So in summary, I think we need a system that recognizes, one, the achievement that maturity level 3 have achieved, and 2, a system that will put them on that continuous improvement so that they can actually then get even to where the WLAs are. Mm-hmm. That's what I would want to say for now, and I would be happy to continue on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the explanation. So now we're hearing that the WHO global benchmarking tool is all about systems, not about operations performance evaluation. That's why, if I understood it correctly, WHO is really focusing on the PQ, not giving this work to national regulatory authorities. Kind of a simplified kind of explanation, if I'm correct. If not, please come on in.
As I said, it has some elements of performance evaluation.
Yeah.
And in fact, we would like to even to strengthen. Let me be transparent here. For example, those that were benchmarked at the beginning, the elements were not as emphasized as possible. But because of this same reflection, why don't you recognize this? We have strengthened the performance evaluation incorporated to a certain extent that we are getting blamed and said, those first you benchmarked first, you did not ask all these things. And for us who are coming later, but it is actually to respond to these aspirations, to say, look here, let's increase as more performance evaluation elements in this process, so that then actually we can give more confidence to the people who want to rely directly to this. So I hope I make that clear.
Yeah, thank you. So I will go to Uche. So now national regulatory authorities, ML3, they're becoming more assertive. I'm not sure if that's the right word, for the lack of the right word, to say that, okay, we can do the kind of things WHO PQ is doing so that Gavi and UNICEF and Global Fund can procure based on the standards that we put and the kind of approval process that we do. So please comment on that, and where are we in terms of ML3 NRS really doing the kind of things PQ is doing so that Gabi could buy from us?
Yeah, okay, thank you. So let me just take us a step back to when we started PQ in Nigeria. And incidentally, Deus was the arrowhead. And also incidentally, I worked with him on the pre-qualification team. So right now, currently we have 2 products that have been pre-qualified, and both are from the same company. And this same company was a company that Deus instructed me to do the final verification on this company and submit a report. And I did, and the report was accepted. So both of us understand how PQ has fared in Nigeria. However, when we started this sometime in 2012, there were like 4 companies who were in line for pre-qualification, but they all fell by the wayside. So the point I want to raise here is many people initially were interested in getting to that status, but they later found and they started withdrawing because, number one, it was capital intensive. Many of them couldn't continue. But more importantly, why many of them pulled back was because, they had a lot of expectations. People who had gone that far would at least see something, some kind of patronage, even from local authorities. But this wasn't coming. So at some point, it became a question, do we really have to go this hug and then like waste all our money and then we get nothing in return? So that's kind of, drew the program back a lot in Nigeria. But going forward, yes, we're happy now that, but we want more companies to join the wagon. However, having attained maturity level 3, I strongly believe that we may, in future, be able to have somewhat more efficient approach than even the PQ if we follow the requirements as they are stated in attaining maturity level 3. I believe that many of the requirements, they are pretty much similar. I took part I was quite instrumental to NAFDAC attaining maturity level 3. I was in regulatory inspection. I coordinated it. So I understand and I know that there are loads of similarities between what was expected of us during that activity and what we also expected of companies who were trying to pre-qualify their products, because you can't give what you don't have. You need to build yourself, strengthen your regulatory processes and systems before you can pass this over to the manufacturers. So pretty much what I think will happen is that as we progress, in November, actually, we're going to have a re-audit by the WHO GBT. So we are praying that all will be, it's not been easy, It looks like this follow-up audit, is sending us, everybody, we don't sleep well anymore. I don't know why, yes. So we're all on our toes, making sure that we don't want to have any unsatisfactory report. Yeah, so it's driving us nuts. So we just hope that all works out. So I think that as we move forward, as we progress from hopefully ML3 to ML4, the quest for PQ may drop because pretty much it's going to be aligned, on the same level. So the idea now is for us to get there and then try to, of course, improve the oversight functions we have over our manufacturers So that is what I want to add here.
Thank you very much. That's to say that what Desu raised about ML4 continuous improvement of the system and the evaluation. So I will go online to Mimi to really give us what Ghana FDA thinks about, playing a part in this process.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Deus for congratulating us. And he said a few things that I thought were positive. But what I say is congratulations alone does not do the work. I talked about recognition, and my question is how? Now, if you look at PQ, and going back to the time of PQ, when countries, there were no ML3 countries, there were no countries with strong systems. And at the end of the day, a strong system or a strong policy management system is very important. It's more important than being a listed authority, if you ask me. Now, competence is based on systems. If you can be competent, if you are not running a good system, there's nothing that is going to be done. Now, obviously, we're all aware that the situation has changed. There are now 6 ML3 countries in place who were qualified by WHO, and we are assuming by the same standards that a PQ review would go into. I have quite a few staff who are part of the PQ process, both in evaluation, that is marketing authorization, and also in licensing. Now, if you ask me, if you look at the entire drug lifecycle management, PQ works as an agency, a procurement agency, makes a decision after evaluating and brings a product into the country. You would say they bypass sometimes they bypass the regulator for things like vaccines sometimes. If the regulator is not strong enough, the product will come in. Now, if you do that, if you ask me, and it is done only with a PQ system, we look at the entire drug life cycle management from the beginning to the end. PQ is an event, if you ask me. After that, if you don't have an agency that is strong enough, yes, agencies that are collaborating, what happens to things like safety and things like quality? At the moment, those things are becoming more and more important than even the marketing authorization, because we are having products that are coming straight in from phase 2 trials and coming into a regulatory authority or coming into a country for use. So one of the most important things is the quality management and the safety management. And countries, these ML3 countries have been assessed. Some have ML3 in these systems, and some have ML4. That means that they are advanced. My question is, why would these countries that have been assessed by the same WHO not be encouraged to be part of the procurement system? Because we look at the entire drug management life cycle of the product. And it beats me sometimes because, for example, during COVID, when everywhere was closed down, when we didn't have access to as much information, some of us countries licensed COVID vaccines at the same time as WHO, and we got the same results. And we were, at the time, we're just become ML3. Some of us licensed vaccines or refused to license vaccines that were licensed elsewhere because we were strong enough. My question is, if I am going to look at the entire product life cycle, management cycle of the product, if I'm going to look at the entire chain, is it not then prudent that I am part of the decision of allowing the products into the country, rather than a procurement agency alone doing it? So back to my question, Dios has talked about performance and has talked about competence. Do we need to go from ML3 to ML4 to WLA? No, because some of us a lot of the ML3 countries are competent enough to do this. So I don't think that there should be that stepwise approach. I also don't think it is actually necessary. I've had a communication with a country that is WLA, and my systems are stronger than that country because they are WLA in one particular function, whereas I am ML3 and competent in all the regulatory functions. So I think that if WHO wants, and WHO, we are I don't know, they are the ones who qualify us, and they cannot be qualifying saying that one standard is higher than the other. I think that it is a reputational risk. It is an ethical risk if it is that happens. Countries have ethical responsibilities and legal mandates to monitor the products of their markets. So I think that ML3 is good enough for a country that is going to be the recipient of a particular product to be part of the procurement process. That is what I think. And also then to be part of the monitoring of the product when it is on the market. Yes, there's history from before when we did not have the competence, but, and we know, Uche talked about it, PQ is becoming more and more expensive, and the cost is being cast down onto the countries and onto the users in the countries. Why would you not include some of us ML3 countries in this process? That is the question that I asked. It would allow us to be recognized. I mean, yes, PQ is there, but agencies in Africa or ML3 have demonstrated that we have a high level of competence in the areas of medicines regulation. I think it is about time, if you ask me, that we became part of the process, especially if the products are being brought to our region. So it is not just PQ, and ML3, with the support of WHO, supporting us with whatever we need to be part of that decision. That will give us the trust and recognition that we want. But I don't think that the trust and recognition is gained from going from ML3 to ML4 to WLA. I don't think so. I think that there needs to be some kind of phased approach, and WHO needs to list this approach that they are going to use. And it has to be now, because it is a bit, when you tell your government that you have been assessed and this is how strong you are, and you can authorize products for use in your own country, but certain products where you have strength in and you cannot authorize for them to be brought because they are being procured by an agency outside, I think it does not give us the recognition that we are looking for. It does not give us the trust, or give our governments the trust that they are looking for. So I think that there needs to be some transition period where we come together and work together as we phase out PQ, if you ask me, and ML3 countries who are moving on to WLA, which could be just in one function, or it could be the entire chain, then come up to take over the PQ. If it does not happen, very soon ML3 countries are going to become wary. Countries that have attained ML3 are going to become wary because they would seem to be climbing the ladder all the time without the recognition that they need. That is my point. At the moment, there are 6 of us. We are very, very comfortable with each other. We are very happy to accept the work that each and everyone has done. If South Africa registers the product in their country, in Ghana, I'm happy to accept it by looking at the assessment report. That is how it has to become. If we are moving on to things like AMA, and we are the ones who are going to be working on the technical committees to make these products available to the African Medicines Agency. So all in all, I mean, if you ask me, I would say that African regulators who have achieved WHO-ML3 should be given greater responsibilities in medicines procurement. We have proven that we can do it. It is not just a systems thing, it is a competence thing. And we have proved that we are competent. And we are competent enough to be part of PQ when it is being done. We all have staff who are in PQ. And we've proven that we can monitor the safety and the quality of our products after PQ. We even have a database now, which is the AU3. So we're all putting our data into one common database. I think that I don't think it should be a long-term goal. I think it should be a short-term goal to see how we will approach this with the help of WHO, with the support of WHO, because WHO has made the decision for both PQ and for both assessing African regulators. And it is not right for it to be seen as a lower standard than PQ. So that is what I'll say for the time being. Thank you.
Very much. I mean, appreciate it. Thank you very much. I will just, it's not a back and forth, but I will just ask Desu to comment on that. We need to really understand each other, because we need to find a mechanism where we have our ML3 national regulatory authorities participating in this process of approval. Please.
So just to start by saying that the intervention by Mimi echoes what I said. There is a need to recognize the achievements made. Let's begin on that positive note. And then add to say, the systems put in place, maturity level 3, maturity level 4, and maturity is all indicator-based and evidence-based. It's not me looking at Uche and say she has very nice glasses, and it is evidence-based and it's all systematic and all that. And that's why it's if one is maturity level 3, the system says the outcome is maturity level 1. If it's 2, it says 2. If it's 3, it's 3. And if it's 4, it's 4. So that is, I want to believe, an objective process. And clearly to move either out of experience, out of practical or whatever, then you can, and evaluation can move from one stage to another. I think the question she rightly brings is, one, how can we recognize the achievements made so far? Or two, to put what responsibility can be assigned to a level that they have. And I think those are valid discussion points. Let me add and say, reiterate the point that I've said, and I strongly believe in this, that this issue of exemption because a product has been procured by an international body and all that, and overriding a national regulatory system should be a thing of the past. So it should always, whether you have used the reliance, it is the final mandate is always with the national regulatory authority, irrespective actually of your maturity. You decide to say, look here, in this respect, I'm going to use the reliance. I'm not going to duplicate this, or in this case, I don't believe that what has assessed this process before is adequate. I am going to assess it myself. So, but the issue of whether Gavi or UNICEF comes to say that because it has been approved by PQ, or it's because it should not be registered in the country, I think should be out of the question. In terms of definitely the proposal that I made is she actually raised that we need to work together, and actually, and rightly say at some point even phase out PQ. I am very comfortable with that because definitely WHO is strengthening regulatory systems so that countries can be on their own, but based on that ladder, that system that has been understood. And by the way, this system, although run by WHO, was after a consultation by all member states, and that's what led to that system and what each system can do.
That's the point. So without phasing out the PQ, with our stronger national regulatory authorities, Mimi was saying that, you know, they have the safety management system and the quality management system in place, and they can be doing things that WLA can do to the level of PQ, or to give approval similar to the PQ. So, okay, that's because of the time. Let's move on to the last agenda, which is you mentioned about. Okay,
let me say one point.
One more.
And it may be a simplistic example. Talking about recognition. Let's narrow down to vaccine pre-qualification. Let me use that one. If the authority is not maturity level 3, we will not even accept an application from that jurisdiction. When it attains, we accept that application because we know biologicals need constant oversight, including lot release and other constant oversight. It's a recognition already. It may not be enough, it may not be enough, but already is a recognition. Definitely in all system, all products system.
Okay.
For oversight, we work with the regulatory authority wherever that product is marketed to have oversight. So that collaboration is already. Thank you.
Thank you very much. To the last question. So someone raised about reliance and recognition. So far, we have been practicing reliance between ML3, NRS, and the less matured ones. But the idea of reliance among us, the ML3 themselves, and recognition is something that we want to really discuss today. So I will pass over to Mimi to give us what she thinks about reliance and recognition of the 6 ML3 NRAs. Mimi, please.
Thank you very much. I think I mentioned it before. We thank WHO for assessing us and for now having a group of 6 countries that are ML3. Now, what we are looking at and what I think, at least it's a start, is that a discussion on how, for the 6 of us that have been assessed, you know, we always say the regulatory agencies have little resources. And through the WHO benchmarking, we now can post public assessment reports. We all have different names for them. What we can look at is, you know, if Nigeria has registered a product and or has authorized a product and they put the assessment report on their website, I have access to it. I know that we've both been assessed by the same system. Yes, Dio's talked about competence, but I know that Nigeria has competent staff. We will look at the assessment reports and see whether from that we can have an abridged form of licensing or authorization by using Nigeria's assessment report. The same with South Africa. South Africa, you know, looks at a product, and they are ML3, especially for vaccines. If they have an assessment report, yes, Ghana is happy to look at that assessment report and take an abridged decision based on that. Once the submissions of the dossiers will be the same, but at least we can look at the report from South Africa, from Tanzania, from Egypt, and from Nigeria, and see, and shorten my process, and then, you know, focus on doing something. The same with PQ. We can have an abridged form, and it is something that we are very eager to talk about and recognize each other's work. And then we can focus, as it's always been taught by us, you know, to us by WHO, focus on more important things like clinic monitoring quality and monitoring safety of products. At the moment, we already put all our safety data into one safety database, which is fantastic. It allows us to look into the database and see what somebody else has done. And that was established during COVID with these a few more. We're now 14 countries, which is the AU3S. So this, I think, will be an amazing step in the right direction. And I know we will get the support of WHO to do this because they have assessed us. And I think that, and for example, in Ghana, we have countries that also recognize what we do. So it becomes like a tag along. So if we recognize what, say, South Africa or Tanzania has done, it pulls along another 3 countries who recognize what we have done. And it just allows medicines. And at the end of the day, it's allowing, ensuring that we have access to medicines very quickly, same as PQ. And I think once we know that the quality of work we're doing is the same, I think it will go a long way to ensure access of the needed medications and the needed medical products for us. So that is, for me, is what I think that would be a fantastic thing to do. And we've already started talking to each other about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll pass it to Uche to comment, please.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yes, Mimi has said that because I know there's already a consortium of the 6 agencies. They are already talking to themselves, even though you know, the outcome hasn't been concluded, but at least something has been started, and it points to the need for harmonization. Harmonization of guidelines of all these NRAs in terms of sometimes guidelines are interpreted in different ways. I remember Deus was my boss. We had the GMP guideline, and we needed to categorize the inspection observations, and you could see people categorizing in different ways. You observe the same thing, and the categorization in terms of risk will be different. So these are things that need to be harmonized for these 6 NRAs to be on the same page. So that's for harmonization and guidelines. Also harmonization, mutual recognition, like Mimi also said. We need to establish formal agreements, and they need to be spelled out clearly what the functions or responsibilities of each NRA will be, so that everybody is working together and they're on the same page. Of course, joint inspections and joint assessments that will build a lot of trust for the 6 NRAs who have maturity level 3. And then capacity building and training, where there will be joint trainings, joint workshops to bring people together. Then there will be need for, I think Mimi also said that, information sharing platforms. There has to be a secure database where all the NRAs will share information, maybe assessment reports, inspection outcomes, reports from pharmacovigilance, all of those things. And, that will bring a lot of transparency and build trust among the 6. We can also have some trust building activities. For instance, the twinning programs, the joint workshops, the exchange programs. These are things that will build a lot of trust among the 6 NRAs. And of course, common review processes. I think Mimi also talked about that. So these are things that can be done for the 6 to recognize each other and work together as a team.
Thank you very much. Thank you. This is really exciting discussion. I will ask Tumi to come in quickly, but before that, I will just ask Sibu to really give us a comment what PASS is doing in terms of supporting national regulatory authorities on harmonization and reliance and mutual recognition. Quickly, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Abebe. I'll be very quick. I think, first of all, this is a very great discussions in terms of what the NRAs are doing. In terms of path, I'll still go back to an NGO. We've worked, we continue to work with NRAs, both on advocacy, but also on providing technical support. We work with NRAs, but we also work with the manufacturers themselves. We've, amongst the things that we've done is we've had advocacy targeting ministers, be it the SADC health ministers, attended those together with Audenipad, made presentations to advocate for countries to sign onto the AMA Treaty. We've worked with the regulators as well to have opinion editorials, which is part of advocacy as well. And we've worked with yourselves in terms of assessments, in terms of capabilities of manufacturers, and also have gone into then work with the manufacturers as well in terms of assisting them to meet the PQ requirements. I think one thing probably that's forward-looking is just building on these discussions to say, how do we become intentional about working with both the regulators and the manufacturers as well, in terms of ensuring that they meet the required standards, and also have discussions that will have WHO, that will have the NRAs, but also have the manufacturers themselves in terms of how do we intentionally bring African manufacturers to meet these requirements, and also what policy reforms will be needed that are very intentional, have a framework, a roadmap to say what is needed, both from the regulator side, but also from the manufacturer side as well. Each time we have the discussion around PQ, the issue of capital intensive costs, and it comes up, and that's a huge impediment for local or localization or local manufacturing. So if we are to grow in this area, I think we need to find models that will be favorable to African manufacturers, and that's not to say it's models that will compromise the quality. They should still maintain the quality and have products that can stand alongside the best in the world. But we do need to look at how do you make this doable for African manufacturers. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult to grow this to grow the local manufacturing and still comply. I think those are my comments, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me just, because who is in the room. And South Africa is a leading country in terms of vaccine manufacturing. We have at least 2 companies who are, progressing really well and will bring vaccines to the market in the coming 3 to 5 years. So I just want to hear from her, and then I will ask the audience to ask.
Thank you very much, Abebe, and fantastic reflections from the panel. So I'm going to read a statement that's in an article that was published yesterday in Health Policy Watch News, and it's about the Mpox outbreak, and it makes reference to a WHO Africa conference that's currently taking place. And it says, and we have our friend Diaz here, so we can be open about these conversations. It says the WHO has been criticized for being too slow to evaluate potential Mpox vaccines already approved by the US and Europe, thus leaving Africa dependent on donated vaccines. Africa's biggest vaccine procurers, Gavi and UNICEF, are unable to buy vaccines without either EUL or full WHO approval. And I think this is the crux of it. We sit with Africa in dire need of vaccines. We have procurers who are ready to buy, but because there's no WHO approval, they're not buying. And I'm not saying this is because of WHO. It's as Dea says, they made the decisions. And I think we need to, and I'm glad you're chairing this session, Abebe, we need to have a conversation with these procurers, because we've seen in terms of the incidence of Mpox, you've got South Africa, which is ML3, that is being affected. You have Nigeria, you've already given emergency use authorization. There's a few others. What's stopping us from coming together as ML6, as the ML3 countries, all 6 of us, receive a dossier for Mpox, review it now, make a decision, and then these agencies procure? And that's really the crux of it. And for me, this is a conversation that needs the 6 of us, that needs WHO, and that needs these procurers in the same room to say we have to do things differently. Children in the DRC are dying. And that's the consequence of this. Children are dying, yet there are mechanisms to do things differently.
So let me ask the audience for questions. So Ondari first, and second and third.
Thank you.
Quick.
A quick one. My name is Ondari from IBA, and I'll want to pick up from where Dr. Tumia said. I think I can't remember where it was saying that then WHO was saying that they can go ahead, Gavi can buy from the Procure, they can procure those vaccines from the companies that do have those doses, and then they hope they will be able to procure them next month when they are sitting. And my question is, in terms of emergencies, if this will have transcended the boundaries, just like we had in COVID, will WHO has decided, no, let's not wait for the routine meeting and sit now. I think the rationale of some of the decisions. But then I think maybe for the reflection of the panelists, now that we have these 6 ML3, we have AMA coming up. Maybe the question will be the place of AMA as we try to do work jointly, and also for the other countries that have got manufacturing intentions but still have a long way to go, and how these 6 ML3 regulatory authorities can be supportive.
Thank you. Let's just take the questions and come back to you. Yeah.
Great conversations. I really enjoyed every contribution. My name is Daniel Ndima, and I lead a startup that is manufacturing IVDs, and we developed, I think, Africa's first PCR test for COVID, and that was SAPRA approved. We made stock that was close to $9 million, which we had to discard because some African countries were not procuring from us because they needed Procure. And my question is there any consideration for startups by WHO Procure in Africa? Because that is all that we have in Africa. There is a problem around algorithms that are mismatched between countries. I think that needs to be looked at. And yes, WHO Procure is I'll say to us as startups in Africa is something that, I don't know how to put it, but it's really terrible to us because we don't have the kind of capacity that the multinationals have. It's almost like it's a market protection mechanism from our side. That's how we see it. And it doesn't make sense that when we developed these medical or health products, we follow WHO guidelines based on what our regulators say. Yet we have to go through 2 regulatory hurdles. Yet the first hurdle follows WHO guidelines. I don't know, maybe I'm a bit optimistic, but I hope that really we can make sense in addressing some of these things very urgently. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's take the last question from Ian, and then.
And I'm coming straight after him as well. So, Des, on the one hand, I'm listening to this conversation. I'm going, please don't fight like this in front of the children. But in fact, you've got to take the message from this, right? If the industry figures out that the regulators are fighting for their rights like this, it's not going to take long before the Health Ministers Committee at African Union figures it out, when it's going to become an agenda item for the heads of state, and it's going to be unholy mayhem. So I think there's a very clear message in this, and I just want to hear your thoughts on that. The second one is, though, so standardization, right? You made a comment earlier that ML3, you can go straight to WLA. I just want to make sure that I heard you right, and that is something you're willing to say, you can go ML3 to WLA without going via 4. And then the last question is, standardization, what preference? How NEPAD is working on a preference list for products for local manufacturing. There's prioritization lists being developed. How do we make sure that those, until we get change, that those are prioritized for WHO PQ?
Thank you very much. So, yes,
Quite a number, and thank you all for your contributions. Let me just begin by, in terms of, I think the question that came from the contribution from both Uche and Mimi. From my personal experience, working together actually brings strength. Definitely, I fully encourage the ML3 working together, because collectively it will be a strong output, and that actually may even bring faster the recognition that we are talking about than even working individually. So that is encouraged. And secondly, about recognition, I alluded to it, I may reiterate and said that's why we're actually working on an abridged, we called it a facilitated procedure to differentiate it from abridged depending on the WLA, but an abridged, a facilitated procedure to recognize rather than repeat, to recognize the assessment of ML3. So that is already something in the works that we need to recognize and take forward. Now, in terms of costs and intensive costs, actually, it reminds me, I almost collapsed. I think it was in this room. Yes, there was a workshop and there was somebody presenting on behalf of the veterinary, and said, you know, it's very difficult to achieve GMP, so that GMP should not be applied to veterinary products. I'm using that example to exaggerate, but to see where this type of discussion leads to. Definitely, there are efficiencies there, but I think we need to send a message that quality has a cost, and it's not quality because it's demanded by WHO pre-qualification or whatever. And I told, let me be, I told some Indian manufacturer, I first went to India in 1996 as an inspector. And I told, there are those who just want to learn from an inspection and correct. There are those who would want to argue their way outside of the inspection. Those who wanted to correct, work and correct, have actually now entered even all the world markets. And those who wanted to argue their way out have either collapsed and These maturity level 3 that we are talking about that have been strengthened, let me tell you, they are going to be increasing demands, requests on manufacturers. And if you don't, because you think you have been on the market, I'm telling you, leave alone even PQ is not there. Maturity level 3 and the regulatory authorities are going to make these demands. And if you don't meet them, you will actually end up leaving the market. So yes, it has a cost, and there could be different ways of meeting those costs. But I think the narrative should not be, unless come to me and said, this requirement of yours is overboard, it's not necessary, and there we can deal with that. But in terms of investing in quality, and definitely we should all support it. The next,
sorry, before you move on,
Mhm.
but the question is not like manufacturers don't want to invest in quality.
Mhm.
The question is the process itself is costing them really too much money, unaffordable for some of the manufacturers. So they weigh between like, okay, what if I get the pre-qualification and spend this amount of money to get the pre-qualification, or I just go without pre-qualification?
okay, we can talk about the cost. But let me first use a scenario
Sorry.
and say that if today there is a threat here, okay, in this room, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4 doors out of this room. If there is a door that is open and you want to survive here, I don't know why you will all find yourself, you don't want to keep knocking on the door to break this door when you see the one that is open. I hope I'm understood on that respect. But let me actually come to I think sometimes the story about what was published in the papers and put it in its proper context. And yesterday, I was actually attending, in fact, 2 interviews that I had to attend to address the same issue. People actually who read the story think that pre-qualification has been assessing Mpox vaccines since 2022, and the process has taken that long. So the pre-qualification is slow, and hence the delay. I think the story has not been understood. What happened in 2022 when the breakdown of Mpox was declared? Everybody looked on the market and said, what vaccines are there? The vaccines that were there, the 2 common ones and the others in the stockpile, were all previously used for smallpox. None of them had any efficacy data on Mpox. A scientific conference was chaired by eminent scientists, some of them even from this country, and said, okay, what is the best approach in this respect? Yes, we could trigger EUL. Definitely it could not be pre-qualification because there was no efficacy data. We could trigger EUL. And the scientists and the different experts said, if you trigger EUL, the products will be used outside the research protocol. And even in the next outbreak, we said there's no efficacy data. So a decision was made by the experts and said, let's not trigger EUL, and that it is deployed. So there was no assessment of any Mpox vaccine until when the DG triggered the EUL on the 9th of August this year. And the first submission was made on the 16th of August and completed on 23rd of August. It was partial, and both of the 2 manufacturers, MVA and LC16, made their submission on 23rd of August this year. And based on that, WHO said we will even up front, we will target to complete this assessment within 3 weeks. So And at risk, we had a meeting to the point with Gavi and said, look here, at risk, in order to proceed so that people were saying in order not to do things in a sequence, in parallel, start the process at risk so that should it be positive. So I thought I should put that in the proper context. People misunderstand. Lastly, I think the point, yes, the startups and the algorithms and the terrible and the protectionism and the good thing maybe actually even from what I had about some of the people, when the medicines pre-qualification is sitting, it sits every other month for 1 week in Copenhagen. There are approximately 50 to 60 assessors from all over the world. And out of those, 3/4 are actually from low and medium income countries, including Africa. So if the issue of protectionism and all that, maybe those 3/4 actually are working against protectionism. And the process is transferred, the reports are and are posted on the website, the public report, both the requirement. Yeah. So I think, yes, I understand. I understand that, but I think as long as the process is transparent in terms of requirement and outcome of the assessment, let's look at it and not insinuate certain. The last point is about this becoming actually the next subject of the next World Health Assembly and other forum. I can tell you it has already become. For those who followed the INB discussions, this was at the center of those discussions. But at the end of the day, unfortunately or fortunately, after all the facts were soberly discussed, we said it is a requirement, and all we need to do is to strengthen our regulatory systems to reach, rather than saying let's reduce the standards in order to meet that. I stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. But the last one, I think Ian asked about moving from ML3 directory to WLA.
I think I wish I could, but it's for ML3 is the minimum entry point to the. Then once you apply for for WLA, you cannot apply for WLA if you are below ML3. But once you are ML3 or ML4, you can apply. When you apply, you undergo performance evaluation. Performance evaluation. If you are at ML3, that performance evaluation will include assessment of the relevant ML4 indicators as you move to. So it is ML3 plus performance evaluation and any other relevant indicators that to get to WLA. Thank you.
Yeah, and then we will have to give Mimi to give the final word as she is from. Yeah.
Yes.
Please.
So just one correction. I think what I'm hearing the team say is it's not that they want reduction in quality standards and requirements. What they're asking is if an ML3 regulator in your country, Nigeria, has authorized you, in case of Daniel, why do you still need WHOPQ for others to buy from you? So the standards in Nigeria are ICH standards. We're all aligned. It's what's W. So there is no compromising at all. It's really about the added requirement for others to procure. Thank you. Just that clarity.
Thank you very much. We have 2 minutes. I will just ask Mimi to give us the final word.
Thank you very much. Just to thank everyone on the panel for such vibrant discussions. My final comment will be that nobody knows. There's a saying that nobody knows how tight the shoes is apart from the person who's wearing them. And sometimes those of us in Africa know how badly we need products and how ready we are to support that process to ensure that we get the products in a timely manner. I'm very glad that WHO, as represented by Dios, is also looking at the approach where the stronger regulatory agencies can have an input in pre-qualification, in procurement, alongside currently the pre-qualification process, to ensure that we get these medicines as quickly as we need them, because we know how badly we need them. We see the issues that are happening particular to our region, and sometimes it is ethically unacceptable for some of us to sit down and twiddle our thumbs, but we know that it is possible for us to make these products available in a timely manner. So I'm very happy with this meeting. I'm happy that there can be a phased approach where agencies in Africa take on bigger responsibilities in medicine procurement. And I really pray that following this session, this will be carried on to ensure that it does happen and it doesn't become just a meeting that we had. So whatever support that we can have to ensure that we have greater responsibility to support the medicine procurement process, so we don't wait for medicines like we did during COVID, I would be so, so grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much, my panelists, and it has been really exciting discussion. And thank you for giving me the opportunity. I knew nothing about regulatory, but somehow, so I'm learning, and thank you for the opportunity. I think we have one important stakeholder that we should bring in, which is global procurers. I mean, so all this discussion is because the Gavi Global Fund decided just to make PQ as a standard. So we're not saying we should compromise the standard, cut corners, no. But should we just go through the PQ, or should we have an alternative? That's something we should have a frank discussion on. And thank you very much. And over to you, Tumi. Is it over? Can I announce, or we should go back to the plenary? Excellent. Thank you very much.